Today we're going to learn how to name organic compounds. So we're going to call this organic nomenclature. I put a diamond here because a diamond is composed of carbon, and the organic molecules we're going to talk about have carbon as a backbone. So what are organic compounds? Organic compounds include carbon, so we say it's the study of carbon-containing compounds and all their properties. Organic compounds usually contain one of these 6 elements: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. Actually, these 6 elements comprise 99% of the mass of all living things. So we call this, organic chemistry is also called the chemistry of living things. So organic, we're going to think about the carbon compound. And if you look at the structure I've drawn here, or the model here, this is actually, this would be a carbon with 4 hydrogens around it. If you remember when we did modeling. It would look much like this with the tetrahedral arrangement that we've talked about. Mostly we're going to be looking at something called hydrocarbons to start with. Hydrocarbons are actually that. They're the simplest type of organic compounds, and they just contain the 2 elements, carbon and hydrogen. Now, these hydrocarbons can be one of 3 types. They can be a straight chain, they can have branches, or they could be in a circle where they reconnect, which we call a cyclic molecule or cyclical. Carbon compounds tend to form 4 bonds to have a tetrahedral geometry. Now here we see carbon bonded with 4 hydrogens, and we see it has a tetrahedral arrangement with a 109.5 degree angle. So classification of hydrocarbons. We're going to put hydrocarbons into 3 categories. The first category is the one we're going to work on today the most. That's called alkanes. Alkanes we'll know because they end in A and E as a suffix. So alkanes contain all single bonds. And we say these are saturated because since they're all single bonds, no more hydrogen atoms could be attached to them. The next group is called alkenes, E and E. Now alkenes are going to contain at least 1 double carbon-carbon bond. We say these are unsaturated because if you broke that double bond, more hydrogens could be added. And the last group of hydrocarbons is called alkynes, A-L-K-Y-N-E-S. Alkynes, you guessed it, have a chain of carbons with at least 1 triple bond, and these are also unsaturated because more hydrogens could be added. For hydrocarbons, we're going to memorize a list of the number of carbons. You may not know this now, but we're going to use it so much that you're going to become familiar with it. It's methane, ethane, propane, butane, pentane, hexane, heptane, octane, nonane, and decane. Now, how do you remember that? Well, methane is what is released when animal or human flatulates. Ethane is what's usually in our gas jets. Propane is what if you grill, use a propane tank. Butane is what's in a lighter. Now, you remember a pentagon has 5 sides, so penta helps with that. Hexa, you remember, because it has 6 sides, so that helps with hexane. Heptane, however, is a weird one, so hepta means 7. Octa, you may remember, means the number 8, so octa is 8. Nona, that goes with the number 9, and decade is 10 years, so that's 10 carbons for decane. So we got meth, eth, prop, bute, pent, hex, hept, oc, non, and then dec. Now notice every single one of these ends in A and E. So what that means, if you were to draw these structures out, every single one of them, from methane all the way down to decane, you would have all single bonds. So all these are what we call saturated. So, for example, methane would look like this. Notice there are single bonds between the carbon and the hydrogens. So all the carbons have what we call an octet of electrons. They like having 8 electrons around them, so you'll have to do that when you draw them and realize that's what you have. And all the hydrogens will have a duet of electrons. Notice the hydrogens here, the bond represented around 1 hydrogen is a duet, and that's what's stable. But with the carbon, there's going to be 4 pairs, so 2, 4, 6, and then 8. So we have an octet around every carbon atom. How does this nomenclature work? Well, first of all, when you look at a carbon compound, you have to identify what is called the parent chain. The parent chain is the longest continuous chain of carbon atoms. And off that chain, we're going to have something called substituents. A substituent is an atom or group of atoms which take the place of hydrogen in the parent chain. So for example, if we look at this molecule we have here, we want to identify first the parent chain. So we want to see where we have the longest continuous chain of carbons. Hopefully I'm going to be circling it here. You see this is the longest continuous chain of carbons right here. So what I circled would be the parent chain. Now what I'm going to do is draw a box the best I can. This is a box, this is a substituent. Instead of hydrogen at this one location, we added a substance, or it could be a carbon or another atom that is not hydrogen. So that is what I call a substituent. The longest continuous chain for this would actually have six carbon atoms, and then we have the one substituent of a CH3. So let's do some more naming stuff. Well, first of all, here's the steps of naming. So locate the parent chain and number the substituents. Now you want these substituents to have the lowest numbers possible. So number the parent chain starting from the end close to any branching. That's rule number 2. Rule number 3. Number and name the substituents. Remember, substituents are things that are attached to the parent chain. And so the last thing is name the compound with the substituents in alphabetical order, disregarding any prefixes when you're alphabetizing. So here we go. And if the substituent is used more than once, we use a prefix di, tri, and tetra. So let's see an example, naming of a branched hydrocarbon. So we have the substance here. This is the same one we had before. So we have the parent chain. So hopefully you identify this parent chain of 6 carbons. Now what you want to do first is remember 6 carbons means hex or hexane. So this is a hexane molecule, but we want to put the name of the substituent in front of that. A couple of other things you may notice about this drawing. Notice here they wrote H3C. Then on this side they wrote CH3. The reason they did that is because the bond is actually to the carbon, and then the hydrogens bond to that carbon, and similarly over here. So we split the sides of the hydrogens because the hydrogens are simply attached to the carbon, not the hydrogen. So if we wrote CH3 here and switch the places, it would look like the hydrogen was attached to the carbon, and so that's why we switch places and put the hydrogen on the other side of the carbon. After that, we look, and we have the longest chain. The longest chain here, they put the carbons all in blue, and the substituent they put in red. So that is our substituent. So how would you name this? Well, first we need to number it. Should we number it from the right or from the left? Okay, let's start from this side. If we start from this side, we say 1, 2, 3, 4. This will give the substituent a number 4. But if we start from the right side, this would be carbon number 1, this would be carbon number 2, this would be carbon number 3. Now notice that's a lower number, so we would want to number this substance from the right side instead of the left. So if I finish the numbering, it's 1, then 2, then 3, then we have 4, 5, and then finally we have 6 carbons in this chain. So we know it's hexane. So first we want to name the substituent, and the substituent has 1 carbon, so we call that a methyl because there's 1 carbon. And then we want to identify where it is, so we say 3-methyl. So the numbering should look like this with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and our substituent is at number 3 in the parent chain. So the correct name for this would be 3-methyl hexane. 3-methyl hexane. Let's do 2 more examples. Next one, we have this structure, find the parent chain, and then number it so that the branching has as lowest numbers possible. Hopefully you notice the parent chain is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 atoms. Well, we have 5 atoms with this one. Through 5 atoms, that would be a pentane. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And notice that for this one, it really doesn't matter if we number from the right or the left, because we see these 2 substituents here are actually both at number 3, regardless of which side we start on. I would number it. That was our longest chain. The longest chain has a blue carbon, so that's with 5 carbons. Then we have 2 different substituents. Now notice these are separate substituents. If there's 2 carbons attached in one chain, we call it ethyl, but these carbons are separate chains. So both of these are methyl groups, but we have 2 of them. So we want to say where those substituents occur, so we'd say they occur at carbon number 3, and then we'd say there's 6 total carbons, so this is 5 total carbons, so this is a type of pentane structure. This is our structure with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbons, and notice our substituents are attached to carbon number 3. The correct name for this, you want to say where those substituents are, so you're emphatic. You say 3,3-dimethyl pentane. So at carbon number 3, there's 2 methyls, and then we name the parent chain, which is 5 carbons, and that makes it pentane. One more naming structure. First, if you were to draw this model, or were to make this model in the lab, this is what it would look like. Now let's see if we can find the longest chain here. So we see here we have a carbon number go 1, and then we have 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. So it looks like there's about 6 different carbons in this chain. Now what we see also is that this would be carbon number 1 here, and this would be carbon number 2. Now carbon number 2, we have 2 different branches. We have a branch here and a branch on that side. Those are both methyls. Then if we get to carbon number 3, we have a carbon or a substituent that has 2 carbons. Now notice those carbons are in a chain. So this would be called an ethyl, whereas these 2 on this side, they're 2 separate methyls. That would be a 2,2-dimethyl, and this would be a 3-ethyl. Now let's go along the chain. We have carbon number 4 here. Then we have at carbon number 5, though, you see we have another substituent. This is yet another methyl group. So now we actually have 3 methyl groups attached to this parent chain. So that's attached at number 5. Then if we go to number 6, that would be the end of the chain. So if we were to make a drawing of this, this is a way to abbreviate it, which we'll start doing a little bit later. Now notice this one's actually flipped around. So we see this is carbon number 1, this is carbon number 2, this is carbon number 3, this is carbon number 4, this is carbon number 5 right here, and then finally we have carbon number 6. Now notice in carbon number 2, there's 2 branches. That represents a methyl, that represents a methyl. And so that would be the 2 branches we see here and here. Now we go to carbon number 3, we have a branch that completes 2 carbons. So anytime there's a bend or a end of a stick, that would represent a carbon. So here that would be a carbon, that would be a carbon. So there's 2 carbons all together here. So at 3 we have an ethyl group. Now notice at number 4, just like number 4 here, there are no substituents, nothing attached. But we get to carbon number 5 is the same as over here. At carbon number 5 we have a methyl group. And then carbon number 6 is the end of the chain. What we want to do is name these substituents in order. So we see the longest chain has 6 carbons. And then there's actually 4 substituents. Now notice it doesn't matter if we call this carbon number 1 or this carbon number 1. So, but we want to start numbering from the side with any branches. So we'll say this is carbon number 1, this is carbon number 2, this is carbon number 3, carbon number 4, carbon number 5, and then carbon number 6. Now we have 2 different types of substituents here. We actually have 3 methyl groups. There's one methyl group that's a substituent, another methyl group that's a substituent, and yet another methyl group that's a substituent. So we have 3 methyl groups. But we also have an ethyl group. Well, since they're the same type of substituent, we name those in alphabetical order. So we'll name this ethyl first, and then we'll say 2,2 because both of these methyls here are attached to the number 2 carbon. So we'll say 3-ethyl, 2,2-5, because there's another one here, 5-trimethyl, and then hexane. That's our first 3 structures to name. We're going to get a lot more practice in class if you're confused at all.